Hello there, Happy New Year, and welcome to the first episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast for 2022. Did you ever think we'd get here?
Well, I had no expectations. So we survived the first year of the podcast. Thanks to everyone who's been downloading and listening to it.
Absolutely.
So, many thanks to everyone and Happy New Year.
We've got lots of stuff planned for this year, which we're really excited about, aren't we? We want to get a variety of guests on. We're going to get some music colleagues, other people in the industry, and we're hoping to get some of our idols on, aren't we? We want to get a few people involved if we can.
Get in touch. Yeah.
But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in every week, for downloading the episodes, for following us on our socials, on the YouTube. We really appreciate it, and we've had an incredible first 6 months. Long may it rain, hopefully. So, Anyway, to kick off 2022, we are going to do an album that was chosen by Mr. Felipe here, which is Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. Tell us a bit about it. What does this album mean to you? Not musically, just you as a fan.
Personally, it means a lot because it was the first rock album that I've listened to from start to fix.
We need to start the episode.
All right. Here we go. We haven't started properly.
On camera.
We got some Guinness today.
Rock and roll.
Proper rock and roll.
Here we go.
In the morning.
Hey.
There we go. Got to pour it properly as well.
We won't make you wait for what you have to do for Guinness, which is where it sits for 2 minutes, isn't it?
Exactly. Let's just...
We'll do this behind the scenes.
Whilst it settles.
Yeah. Whilst it settles, tell us about Brothers in Arms and what it means to you as a music fan.
For me personally, it means a lot because, as I said to you, the first album I've ever listened to is start to finish instead of compilations or singles or stuff like that.
Oh, really? So this was the first album?
Yeah, I was
hit play?
really young. Yeah, so I listened to the first two songs. I was like, wow, this is really good, and kept listening to it because my stepdad was a big fan, and he had two Dire Straits albums at home, which was two CDs, right? Yeah, and it was Money for Nothing, which is a compilation. So I didn't know, and Brothers in Arms. So I think he told me, no, that one is just like the best of. You need to listen to the album, which is Brothers in Arms. So I've listened to it, and I got addicted to it. And obviously at the time I had, CDs were the only option for me. So it was like listening to the same album every day for a month or two or something like that. And I got all my classmates at school addicted to Dire Straits as well, which was,
You're responsible.
Imagine a whole classroom of young students in South America all listening to Dire Straits.
What year would this have been?
1997.
Okay, so there was still good music floating about in the late 90s, but Felipe's there influencing the whole of the Belo Horizonte music scene, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so obviously, the sound of the drums at the intro of Money for Nothing and the guitar riff, that is the most rock and roll thing in the album, because we talk about rock music here, right? So some people might even argue that it's not a rock album. It's not heavy at all. Not that it has to be heavy to be rock, but and it's more like a pop album if you think about it. If you think about the sort of audience that it reaches. The
sounds of it. That there's a lot of pop in the album.
Yes,
there are a lot of pop elements
because it's an 80s album. There's some sounds that you listen to. It's like, wow, that doesn't really work in this day and age. It's like a bit too outdated. But the composition and the ideas behind it, the lyrics, and they are all very rock and roll to me. And also is a rock band, of course. Yeah. And so Money for Nothing for me was the big song at that time. When I listened to the drums and the guitar, I said, oh, that's rock and roll. Drum solo as an intro, a long intro, build up to a riff. That is fantastic. Yeah. And it was really, really important for me that I had access to that album early in my music life. So,
did it shape your playing in any way?
No, funny or not, no. But it did make me want to be a drummer because of the drum intro.
Yeah. So it kind of did shape your playing.
Yeah. Because it's like I couldn't play that thing at the time, and it was like. I didn't learn any songs from the album. For me, as a musician, it was like I just wanted to listen to it, and I was way more interested in the guitar and the lyrics. So
that's interesting. Good. That's good. We'll remind you guys actually what the Long Live Rock and Roll definition of rock and roll is. We'll take you all the way back to our first episode. God, that's 12 episodes ago now.
Long time. I don't even remember.
So we defined I love that we talk like we're renowned critics in the industry, but let's
pretend we are faking to make it.
We're musicians, man. We are part of it, aren't we?
Yeah.
We defined rock and roll as being musical freedom. Whilst you can define rock and roll by Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis, we know this, but rock and roll as an attitude, as a cultural impact, for us is musical freedom. So it's absolutely fine to talk about albums that are poppy in a sense. But again, we're Felipe, and after we talk through the album, we're going to define why we believe this album is rock and roll and what impact it had on music. So should we get stuck in?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, again, in true Laz style, I'll give you a few little facts about the album and, all the stuff about it. So the album is called Brothers in Arms, and it's released by... Is it the Dire Straits or Dire Straits?
Dire Straits.
It's just Dire Straits. Do you know the most annoying one of that is Eagles.
Is it
Eagles?
the Eagles?
No, it's Eagles.
Yeah, it is.
But you want to say the Eagles.
You can say it's being released by the Eagles. It makes sense.
I suppose
it's not part of the name.
But it's just like you want to say the Eagles,
It was released by the Dire Straits.
There we go. So Brothers in Arms. So Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, released mid-May of 1985. And this is the interesting thing I saw. It was recorded between October 1984 and January 1985. That's a 4-month recording process.
Yeah.
Which, do you think that was particularly normal for the 80s?
Oh, I think so. I think the budgets were massive at the time. So you could do whatever. And probably were playing gigs in between. And I think they were especially careful with that album. One thing you have to consider, which is particularly interesting, is they stopped playing after that tour.
No, really?
So that was the end of Dire Straits until 1992, when they got together again for one more album called On Every Street, which is really cool. More kind of country album.
Yeah.
And they released that one, and that was the last album. So they actually had this, I think they toured until 96 and they stopped for 6 years. Did the last album on that and call it a day. So interesting stuff, isn't it?
I think the interesting thing for me is that when you listen to the album, we identified yesterday that there is a lot of layers in every song. Each song has a lot of instruments and a lot of parts going on. So it doesn't totally surprise me that it's a 4-month recording thing, but for 9 songs, 4 months, I get it. I know how the industry works. I know how recording works, but I don't know, it did just seem like a long time.
I think, because I think they were doing and redoing stuff. So
it had to be perfect.
Knopfler has always been Dire Straits' main producer. So he's like, apart from writing the lyrics, playing the guitar, singing, and driving the band's tour bus, he was, which is true. He was
really, he was the driver.
Yeah, he was
like Bruce Dickinson flying the plane.
Exactly, he does everything. So basically, he was a producer. He wanted things to be perfect, and the actual producer of the album, Neil Doffner, who was working with him, apparently was also a perfectionist. Of course, that's their job, isn't it? You're producing an album, you want things to sound good.
Well, we spoke in the episode last year about Hendrix, how much of a perfectionist he was. I imagine Knopfler was the same. Yeah,
exactly. What surprises me about Brothers in Arms is you reach a certain point in your career where you're famous for something. Right. Dire Straits started in 1978, and the first album was quite bluesy, country-ish. And you listen to that kind of really intricate guitar playing when punk music was taking over. Right, and they were like, wow, these guys are different. They're sound a bit like the band and Bob Dylan and Lou Reed. And they have this really nice guitar style that actually defines the sound of the band. And they were famous for playing longer versions of the songs live. Alchemy, which is their double live album, is one of my favorites, and it features a 10-minute Sultans of Swing. Oh, wow. Like, it's a 5-minute guitar solo. And he was famous for that. When they started recording Brothers in Arms, I don't know if it was intentional or not. We talked about this. We were listening to the album last night, and it's like, you don't have a guitar solo until halfway through the album.
Yeah.
How can a band like them, famous for their guitar solos and everything guitar related, don't have a guitar solo for 5 songs?
It's interesting.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's very cool. It's interesting because I know Metallica did the same with St. Anger, but for St. Anger they removed guitar solos from the whole album. And I suppose
I just want to say this is the only show where we can go from Dire Straits to Metallica and back.
It is a tenuous link. But,
yeah, all right.
But, no, I mean, do you know what? And I was saying to you when we were listening to the album that there's some lyrics in one of these songs that we're going to talk about because, well, we'll get to that later. But this definitely as an album feels like, I don't want to say a concept album, and I don't want to say one continuous song like Dark Side of the Moon sometimes feels, but it does feel like one experience. And what I mean by that is almost like a play or a film.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying, the reason why, because I mentioned this yesterday, is that I asked you if you knew that in the movie Mulan, the animated Disney movie, there are so many standard Disney songs. You know, we all know them if you know the movie. But there's one moment in the Mulan movie, which is where as soon as they see the dead army and the mood of the movie changes like that, there's no more music for the rest of the movie.
So you have half of the movie with music and the other half without music. The same way you have the Wizard of Oz, that we have half of the movie.
The colour.
Yeah, and black and white, and then color. Yeah, and so it's kind of you set a certain standard for half of that art piece, and then for the second half you just change it completely. Yeah, from song number 6 until the end of the album, then you have the guitar solos again, culminating with Brothers in Arms, which is the longest guitar solo, and it's completely guitar based and makes you think, oh, that's Dire Straits again, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it kind of, the thing is, how can you do that with actually starting in a different style? How can you lead the listener to get to the point, okay, I'm more familiar with this, but actually... I
see what you mean. Do you mean that you think...
If Brothers in Arms was the first song, that would be a lot easier for their regular listeners.
For the fans base, because they're saying, okay, I'm used to guitar solos.
But then again, the album sold 30 million copies.
Wow.
And the song Money for Nothing stayed on top of the charts for 10 weeks. So that means they actually managed to reach a much bigger audience than their own audience. And it's fantastic to think of that. I'm a big fan of Abbey Road, the album, because the Beatles have done so much, and at that point, at the end of their career, they did something extra. So if you do not consider that Dire Straits got back for just one more album, that would be like their last studio album, which is the 5th studio album, and last. Yeah. And they were not that young. They were not an up-and-coming band. They were not like famous amongst like young audiences and stuff like that. And they came up with songs that every teenager was listening to. That is amazing, and especially
it's molding a generation, isn't it?
Exactly. So you have this band, they're all over 30s or 40s.
It molded Belo Horizonte's generation.
Yeah, even my mates were listening to it.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
But you got this band, I don't know how old they were at the time, but they didn't look like young and handsome, and they were selling albums for American teenagers. So because of Money for Nothing, because the I Want My MTV campaign, because of loads of things related to the album. So I believe the reason why there's no guitar solos until half of the album, which is something I only noticed by listening to the album again. See, I didn't even notice, but there's lots of guitar, but not in that way. It's not like
there's no solos.
Mark Knopfler is not showing off. He's like, okay, do you know what? I'm a good songwriter, and I'm going to write a good commercial album. The first song, So Far Away. Can you talk through the songs? Can you, or is anything
you
else?
choose?
Yeah.
I mean,
so let's talk. Let's talk about it. Yeah, because
so song number 1 is So Far Away,
and it's a pop love ballad with a clean guitar riff intro, which is like so simple, and the lyrics are so, I don't know, naive. Right. Very like a straightforward love song. The guy is tired of being alone, etc. Yeah. And the backing vocals are beautiful, like long notes and really well harmonized. And it's a huge contrast because Knopfler's voice is more like spoken than singing, isn't it?
I thought the thing that stood out to me of that song was the backing vocals. You pointed them out to me when we were listening. Just so tight And, you know, we made the comparison before, and we'll make it again in one of the songs, to the band. And their backing vocals and their harmonizations of each other's voices were incredible. But the folk feel you get from it is because I'm going to say that they're not always 100% in time with each other, but that's the live feel that they were going for.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's so polished. The backing vocals start at the same time and they end at the same time, and the harmonies are just perfect, and it really gives a pop vibe to this song.
And they're just loud enough in the mix.
Yeah.
They're the perfect spot.
It really is. It's like really an extra layer of keyboards.
Yeah,
isn't
and
it?
they have 2 keyboard players in the band. So they, you know, all those kind of pad sounds that you just hold a note or a chord in order to kind of build a foundation for the harmonies. And they do loads of that.
Yeah.
It's a big characteristic of the band for sure. The keyboards and the backing vocals specifically in this album. And then, so Far Away, great song, nice guitar work.
The one thing I want to say about So Far Away is that the first thing I said to you when we listened to this album last night is it really, really, really reminded me of 90s Britpop music. I couldn't help but hear... I really heard stuff from that Britpop band Pulp.
Yeah.
The ones who did Common People.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what it was. I think it was...
It's a bit sarcastic, isn't it? The way he sings, you know?
Yeah, that's true. But the vocals as well, because he's not singing and he's not talking. It's somewhere in between. The guitars and I suppose the production in a sense were the same. Common People has a lot of keyboards and padding in there, just like this one. So the first thing I thought when I heard So Far Away is I thought Pulp and Britpop. And
that is, when you said that to me, it was like, wow, how can you relate Dire Straits to Britpop? But
did you hear it afterwards?
Yes, I could. Saying? Yeah, you're talking about. I think if you consider the lyrics and the way he's telling the story, it's not taking himself too seriously, is it?
No,
and
you're
Britpop
right.
for me is a massive piss take. Isn't it? It's like they're taking the piss of British lifestyle or things that most people were doing all over the world, like modern life style, pretty much. And they just say this is all rubbish. We're gonna make a big joke out of it. That's how I see Britpop. If you listen to songs like She's Electric,
Park Life,
Park Life, you know, all that. We're
going to stick all these in the playlist. And I know we're talking about a 1980s album, but hopefully you hear the contrast musically that I've made between Common People and So Far Away, but lyrically, like Felipe is talking about, the lyrics. You'll tell us more about the lyrics of this album, but the sarcasm in it.
Oh yeah,
and so we'll put these in there and listen to Park Life, listen to She's Electric, and you hopefully you hear the lyrical comparisons that we're making.
Exactly, and you see that kind of sarcasm or whatever you call it is really, really evident in this album. Money for Nothing is all about that, and So Far Away. You know, I'm tired of making out on the telephone while you're so far away from me. So like, it's like really cheesy pop lyrics,
but they're laughing at themselves.
They are, because if you listen to the first album, the lyrics are so clever, so well written.
What first album?
Dire Straits.
What's it called, the first album?
Dire Straits.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is there a song that we should put in the playlist?
You know, Wild West End.
Okay.
It's a beautiful song.
Oh, you played with that? Yeah, that was lovely. That was really,
song.
really nice.
And the lyrics talking about life in London, stuff like that. Really clever storytelling. And that's the thing about Mark Knopfler, is a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Just like, for me, just like Dylan and Hendrix. So,
and what's the comparison that we made between Hendrix, Dylan and Knopfler? They're not the best singers.
No, technically, not. It's not about that. His voice has got a really nice low tone that not many singers have, and he knows how to use it for sure. But again, he leaves the technical elements for the backing vocals, and the voice is just telling the story.
Yeah.
So, and the way he does it in this album, as I said to you, there's loads of, apart from, I think, Brothers in Arms is a really serious song, really serious approach to songwriting and lyrics. But So Far Away, Money for Nothing, they're like, okay, I'm just having fun here, and I'm, taking the piss out of whatever cheesy love pop songs you want to, want to think about.
For the song comparisons, I'm going to put into the playlist Hurricane by Bob Dylan and Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix.
Great.
Because they're both songs where they're not singing, they're kind of talking / shouting at you, and they're storytellers. Just like So Far Away, and actually most of this album. But anyway, let's move on to song number 2, which is probably the most famous song on this album, which is called Money for Nothing.
And certainly the most important song for them in the album, because it's what connected them to younger audiences. And
why do you think it did that?
Because of MTV. So MTV was running a campaign trying to get the cable operators to have MTV all over America. So the campaign's slogan was, I want my MTV. So they wanted people to say, I want my MTV, I want my MTV.
Right.
And to kind of, ask for the cable operators to provide them MTV. So that was a big campaign. It was highly successful, mainly because of this song.
Yeah.
So basically they did a video which was a 3D animation, which looks awful nowadays, right?
Yeah, but I bet at the time it was kind of...
as the song is sarcastic and is a big joke anyway, it still looks good today, I think, in that sense. Yeah. And everything's so square, like it's terrible. But it was like a massive hit. The band is not featured in the video, pretty much. I think there's a bit of them on the TV. So they appear on the TV or something like that. But it's like two guys carrying the stuff around a store in America, carrying TVs, carrying refrigerators, all the things they say in the lyrics. And that's the video. There's a dog as well, whatever. It's just awful. But a 3D animation on MTV talking about MTV. So Sting joined the band for that song.
Oh, really?
They recorded in, you have the name of the studio.
It was the Montserrat. Oh, yeah. It was Air in Montserrat, and it was actually in a Caribbean island.
Yes, and they actually did a concert for Montserrat years later, whatever. So it's it's a studio where everyone recorded. I think Phil Collins as well, and Sting, of course. And Sting joined them, and he sings the I Want My MTV line right at the beginning, and he uses the melody of one of his own songs. Don't Stand So Close to Me by the Police. Don't stand so close to me. I want my MTV. So it's the same thing. So that's why he got credit as a songwriter. I think he didn't want it, but the label said, no, you got to do this because you own that melody. It has to be like that.
Interesting.
So he contributed with that. His vocals are really, really cool, and it suits the song perfectly. So that campaign helped to boost MTV's reach and helped a lot, because it was their most famous video at the time. The biggest video for Dire Straits and MTV. So that video is totally connected to the history of MTV and helped them a lot. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
I tell you, musically though, I found something really interesting about the Money for Nothing is that although it is a guitar-based song, the guitar is produced and almost sounds synth-like, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I tell you what I think. You remember, Zeppelin, Trampled Underfoot?
Yeah.
I know that is actually a synth.
Yeah.
But
the guitar sounds like that
on
synth.
Money for Nothing sounds like the synth. It's all very produced and very polished, and a lot of effects, I imagine, have been put on the instruments. But it doesn't detract from it. I think the guitar riff is very recognisable. It's very energetic. It has a personality to it. Just something interesting.
It's really, really interesting, and it's such a strong riff. You can recognize it, and the fact that Knopfler plays it with his fingers, it doesn't use plectrum anytime. I haven't seen many guitar players who can actually emulate that riff, because people try to play it with plectrum. It doesn't really work. Yeah. And the way he does it is so cool, and he repeats that riff over and over. Yeah. Also, the drum solos. There's a couple of things to say. Their drummer was a guy called Terry Williams, fantastic rock drummer, who joined the band after the original drummer quit, and he did some really, really nice heavier versions of the drum parts live, and I think is an awesome drummer. But the producer wasn't happy, said this is not a rock album, like not traditional, not a heavy or hard rock album, so we need someone who can play jazz. And Knopfler wasn't convinced. Said no, I like Terry's work in the album. So the album was entirely recorded, and they called Omar Hakim, who is a fantastic session drummer, one of the most recorded drummers, and I think he was drumming for Sting at the time. The producer said, "I want someone who's a jazz player, and you're gonna understand it when you hear it." And so they sent Terry back home for a few days. It's okay, Terry, your job is done here. We're going to get someone else to redo some of the drums. So Omar Hakim came and re-recorded every single drum part in the album, apart from one, which I'm going to tell you.
Wow.
And when Knopfler finally listened to it, said, "Oh, I know what you mean.
He got it.
It does sound better. It's more subtle. There's other, it's a completely different approach. It's kind of soft comparing to Terry Williams playing." And it suited the album perfectly. So they kept Omar's parts, not Terry Williams' parts, but the intro for Money for Nothing. That's the only contribution by Terry Williams that is still in the song.
It's a worthy contribution, though, isn't it?
It's like, wow, because that was one of the things that made me want to play the drums.
Exactly. It's the only part played by
and
him.
it was like, wow, what an amazing kind of random drum solo as an intro. I think that's proper rock and roll drumming. And I think maybe Omar Hakim was like, okay, you know what? I don't have to redo that. That's rock and roll. And cool stuff. And and the other thing about the song is Knopfler wrote the lyrics entirely based on a conversation he heard.
Really?
So that's why we're going to talk about this, because we were talking about things you cannot say and things you can say nowadays in music, and then I'll tell you the story.
Well, and in society altogether. So the lyric, this is the one, isn't it? So the lyric is, the lyric is, and it's repeated, is "little faggot," which obviously is a homophobic slur. But explain to us the context of that in the song.
That's the thing. You got two guys, moving things around in a shop. They carrying TVs, refrigerators, you name it, and they really not happy about their lives. And they're watching MTV, talking about the millionaire pop stars, musicians. And look at that little faggot. Oh, he's a millionaire. Yeah, he's got his own jet plane. He's got etc. etc. Oh, but maybe I should learn to play the guitar. Maybe I should learn to play the drums. So they keep talking about how they want that lifestyle, and because they hate the person who has that lifestyle, they start calling him.
That's why they call it,
Because he look at his hair. It's like, it's not how we are. They. So for me, those two guys carrying stuff around, they are the bad guys in the story.
Yeah,
and you want to portray that guy. Or someone who is not unhappy with his life, but he's jealous of someone else's success. Yeah. So that's not a nice feeling to have, is it? No. So he's portraying them as the bad guys or something like that in the story, isn't it? It's like, those people who are jealous of someone else's lives, and they are using this lure. Yeah. So it's not the problem we have, which I believe we have nowadays, which clashes with the musical freedom of rock and roll that we keep talking about. Is you can't say one thing or another. Oh, you can't use that slur because it's offensive. Yes, it is offensive. It exists in the real world, and stupid people use that slur. Yeah. So if I have a song in which I portray a character that I dislike, so this is the kind of person I dislike, and he's going to use this slur that I wouldn't use, and we got to point, it's kind of, I'm pointing the finger at those people. Not even, I don't think he had a massive point about it, but he was literally just creating a character that would say those things. Yeah. And in actual fact, he heard those exact lines. Pretty much the whole song
is a conversation
he heard in a shop. I think he was buying a TV, whatever. Yeah. And he heard these two guys carrying stuff around talking about, oh man, I'm so tired of, moving these refrigerators, these color TVs. And, oh, look at that little faggot on MTV. He's got everything. Yeah. They started saying those lines, and Knopfler said, well, this is fantastic. So he hid himself in a corner with his notepad and started writing everything the guys were saying. It's like, this is so cool. This is going to become a really great song.
Interestingly, though, the song that we've already put in the playlist, Hurricane by Bob Dylan, and I'm not going to say this one, that uses the N-word because in the same sense, I can't remember the song fully. It's about, I think it's about a black man who is accused of a crime that he didn't commit. And each verse is about how this crime
and they call him the N-word.
Dylan is doing exactly what we've just discussed. He is being one of the racist police officers, I believe, and calls the black criminal the N-word.
So should we be allowed to use those words? Actually, we are allowed.
It's just the consequences.
People are going to cancel or whatever.
But no, I think if an actor is allowed to be on a film and play a character that uses a homophobic or a racist slur, then the problem with music is that you can't make it obvious.
People associate the lyrics to the singer's opinions and views.
Well, it's just
you've got to be clever enough to understand.
Money for Nothing. It's just an instinctive nowadays. I hear the word that was used. I heard the words "little faggot," and I looked at you and I went, "Oh, interesting.
Can you say that in a song?"
Yeah, I said, did he just say that? And you said he's playing a character. And I think if an actor can do that on a screen and be a character who is horrible, and racist, homophobic,
and if you don't understand that you meant to, how can I say? They want you to hate the character.
Yeah,
that's it.
For those
You're supposed to hate that character.
So if an actor can do that on screen, I don't see why a musician can't do that. But nowadays, the popularity and the reach of some of these pop songs,
what I believe is
you'll just be cancelled.
I believe they would censor that part of the song if they wanted to play it on a radio today.
Yes.
Or I think it still plays as it is. But if they were launching this song today, they would have problems.
But the artist would come under fire regardless.
Oh, yes.
Just because they've used that
word.
Most likely. But I think ultimately you're right. The word exists. And as long as... Listen, if Mark Knopfler is being himself and calling someone that, then rightly so. We should say that's not okay. But people need to understand the context of it. Music is not just about the artist singing what he wants to sing about. It's stories, it's experiences, it's conversations in a fridge store.
Exactly. That's what, and it's all real life. What is telling in that song is a real life conversation, and those people exist. Can we pretend they don't exist?
Yeah, good point.
Can we pretend that people don't talk like that? Should we do it?
Yeah.
So I think it makes the song even more rock and roll in that sense, telling a real life story. Life is not perfect. Rock and roll doesn't have to be. And that's a really, really strong thing.
Yeah. Good to end on Money for Nothing there.
Oh, we're not going to end there because we have a segment now.
Oh, you want to do it now? Okay.
No, why not?
It makes sense,
yeah.
So we will introduce a normal segment that hopefully you're familiar with now. This is Laz Unleashed. So in this segment of Laz Unleashed, it's going to be a little different because Felipe is going to recount a story of when we were on tour in Brazil. So take it away.
Yeah, so we were in the car, me, Jack, and Laz.
And your friend Umberto.
Yes, exactly. For those of you who don't know, Jack is Jack J. Hutchinson, the artist we play with. And we were listening to Money for Nothing on the radio, I guess.
No. You wanted to show me the song.
Oh, yes.
I hadn't heard the song before.
So we played the song. I said, this is so iconic. And Jack was like, yeah, listen to that guitar riff. And then we had a massive Laz Unleashed moment.
This is where Laz Unleashed started, isn't it?
Exactly. That's
this is the moment.
Yes, that was the moment.
Full circle.
Iconic, historic moment. Laz said, after we've played the song, we were all excited, the three of us, me, Umberto, and Jack, like, wow, what a song, innit? And silence. And everyone looks at Laz. We were expecting his opinion. He didn't say anything throughout the whole song. He said, yeah, pretty average, isn't it? So what? This is one of the most iconic guitar riffs of all time. Yeah, average. And he says, yeah, it doesn't get to me, it's like the vocals are a bit boring, repetitive, the riff goes on and on, the song is too long, don't like it. And that was it. I was so wow, that's Lars Unleashed. That's how
That's literally where the phrase happened.
That's where your Instagram name came out of this.
All came on this, yeah. Do you know?
So, but now I think you owe Mark Knopfler an apology.
Yes, and I will
I
say
hope
that.
Mark Knopfler listens to this one day and laughs at it. Someone called his song average.
The apology will come because I didn't hear the song in context of the album, and having heard it yesterday, I thought it fits in really nicely. And actually, it's the hit of the album, and it almost feels like it was written to be that. And yeah, I think in context, you got to remember, I don't think I even knew when the song came out when we listened to it. Maybe because it's really well produced, this album. I thought it could have been maybe 90s.
We talked about it sounds a bit too 80s.
Yeah, but this song on its own could have been 90s.
Could.
I think in some extreme circumstances it could have even been late 70s. With really good production, but.
Right,
it's a good tune. It's a really good tune. It fits nicely in the context of the album. And yeah, I'm sorry, Mark Knopfler, for calling the song average back in Brazil in 2019. Yeah.
Shall we cancel Last for that comment? I think we should.
I was going to say, would I?
But he's apologising now, so shall we uncancel Last?
It's a good track. Now that I've heard it in the context of the album, it fits really nicely. It's a great rock track. So
it is really cool. So let's move on.
Track 3, Walk of Life. Very cool one, this one. Very
what
cool.
a tune.
Yeah, very country-esque, isn't it? Really country style.
Totally country. Again, no guitar solos. The guitar is just doing a really country style riff all the way through. And the keyboards, they lead the song, don't they? Yeah. So you have one keyboard, one of the keyboard players is doing the, just the pads, just like holding the chords. And you have the main melody on top of it played by another keyboard. Again, that's Mark Knopfler writing a good song, but not necessarily being the lead instrumentalist in that song. So it's all about the keyboards. And it talks about a guy busking, isn't it? Playing famous old songs and trying to earn his money, playing all night long. And it's just that. It's just like enjoy your life. It's a really, really cool song. The video clip for that one is amazing, in case you guys don't know. They showed loads of footage of sports like American football, basketball, when things go wrong all the time.
Oh, really?
They like loads of those really good athletes not scoring and falling and it's just things don't
failing.
work. By the end of the video, they get everything right. So it works. It's beautiful. And you have the band playing.
I think the interesting thing for me about the song was that although the style is very country, I think that if you take away the keyboards and the backing vocals, it's a country tune. But you put them in and it becomes a pop tune with country elements and country influences. But it's very well written because there's a difference in popularity between country and pop. Yeah. Obviously, pop means popular. So the compositional techniques he's used to put those BVs and synths in, keyboards in, and make it more accessible, I think is really well written song. Yeah,
and it's just it's just a kind of for me a sing along song.
Yeah, and very enjoyable.
I want to dance when I listen to it. So it just served the purpose perfectly. Exactly. It's a short song in comparison to the rest of the album. All songs are very, very long. And then they move on into your latest Trick, which is the fourth song in the album, and has a long, jazzy build up. There's a trumpet solo at the beginning, and it leads you into the sax solo. And the main melody, again, you don't have a guitar solo, you don't even have a proper sax solo, you have the sax melody or riff.
And it's funny, the saxophone is the lead instrument in this song, and I'm including vocals in that.
Yeah.
The saxophone plays a bigger part than any of the vocals. You said to me yesterday.
Well, I think that,
you said there's not even a chorus.
The chorus
there is
the
a chorus, but the saxophone melody is the chorus.
Yeah, it's like you hear the verse and the sax riff or theme and then the verse again, and the sax again. So the sax is a solo.
Exactly, yeah.
It's really the chorus.
The saxophone gave off very 80s vibes to me. It didn't detract from the song.
It's the Brecker Brothers, isn't it?
It's just I could place it. I could place the song and say this was done in the 80s because of the sax. But yeah, Michael and Randy Brecker, right? Randy's on saxophone, I think.
I think Michael Brecker's a saxophone player. Let's check the notes. We've got notes.
Michael Brecker is saxophone and Randy Brecker is trumpet. Yeah. They're known as the Brecker Brothers. You should go and check out some of their stuff because they're fantastic players. They do a lot of jazz fusion. I'll find a song and I'll put one in the playlist, but they're very cool.
So this is an interesting album because of that as well. They got so many musicians to collaborate. So it's not like, the core of the band is a guitar player, bass player, 2 keyboard players.
Yeah.
So you can't do a rock album with just those 4 guys. You need more people. So
anyway.
Great song.
After your latest trick comes track 5, which is called Why Worry. And I just want to start off by saying that we know Mark Knopfler as a guitar. I mean, would you call him a virtuoso? Would you call him one of the elites? Or would you just call him a very, very good guitarist?
I would call him everything you said, like virtuoso.
You think so? That's interesting.
Because you don't have too many guitar players that can emulate his style. That's what,
that's a good point. When you
have someone that no one can sound like him.
Yeah, when you've made your own sound, it's hard to replicate. One thing I loved is Why Worry, for me, the first 2 minutes sound, I can't remember what you said to me yesterday, but you said the guitar reminded you of something. You said it was almost like country guitar picking. And I said, I hear that, but what I hear more of is the Deer Hunter theme played on classical guitar by John Williams. And again, this will be in the playlist, but listen to it because you'll hear the comparisons. His finger picking technique on Why Worry is just incredible. And I'm not even a guitarist. I can just hear the accuracy of his playing, the style of his playing, the dynamics, the soothing tones and textures. It is a stunning intro to a track. Why Worry was beautiful.
And again, without playing a solo, without showing off, Knopfler is just showing everyone how good he is as a guitar player. Such a clean guitar tone as well. Absolutely. And you mentioned the classical element of it. He wrote the soundtrack of one of your favorite movies, isn't it?
Yeah, The Princess Bride.
And it's classical.
Yeah, right? But it's guitar based as well.
Yeah, and guitar based, and it's very classical.
I'll see if I can find The Princess Bride because I've looked for it before and I haven't found it. But it's. So
we're going to put that on the playlist,
and it's very classical orientated again. But again, Mark Knopfler on his main instrument, the guitar.
Yeah, doing a great job. And the lyrics again, and in this case, is the opposite of So Far Away, in my opinion. It's not cheesy and it's not a piss take. For me, it's being honest about, trying to help someone he loves or either him or the character.
They feel very heartfelt, these lyrics. They're quite emotional, and the harmonies between them were lovely. You mentioned the band when we were listening to them yesterday, and this song reminded me of Rockin' Chair by the band, which again we'll put in the playlist. It just feels, again, I know I said that I was drawn to the classical side of it, but if we take what you said, which is the country style guitar, the lovely harmonised songs, it does feel like a band of country folk players sitting there playing their music.
Exactly. It seems like
a lovely song. Lovely song.
And it's not that one. I think that one wasn't a single or anything, but it's one of my favorites. Really
very
good.
Nice.
Moving on.
Track 6 is Ride Across the River, which you said is you love.
I think it's the weakest song in the album.
But you still like it a lot.
I like it. Yeah.
The thing about this is that it's very reggae, has a ska thing. It feels like what Madness were doing in the early 80s. It must be love, the kind of pop reggae thing, whether the hybrid that was particularly, Madness were famous for that. The other thing that came to mind is, I wouldn't say this track feels like a joke in that sense, but it does feel slightly out of place considering the other tracks. You could group 2 or 3 of them together and say, these 3 have elements of country, these 3 have elements of pop, these 3 have elements of the jazz, the saxophone. Yeah. This one feels like it stands out. And it reminds me of Houses of the Holy, Led Zeppelin, Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've mentioned Madness with It Must Be Love, which is, again, this is like, there's 2 cases like rock bands. trying to sound like a reggae band.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of that.
Zeppelin did it to have a laugh.
Yes, they did it for a
Madness
laugh.
did it
And
as a
I
career.
think Knopfler did because he could do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I can do this.
The other thing to mention about here is that there's about 2 minutes of solos, isn't there? And they're really good in this song.
Oh,
Fantastic
yeah, that's where the
solos.
guitar actually takes the lead and plays
Finally.
a solo. That's Mark Knopfler again. Yeah, really cool song.
Number 7, we have The Man's Too Strong, which
love that one.
Really good track. The one thing, and you said to me at the start, take note that the song is going to feel like it takes you to all different levels of dynamics. And I know we've said it before, but for people who don't know musical terms, dynamics means the volume of what you're playing or how hard you're hitting the drums. The contrast, really quiet or really loud,
We say a musician is good with dynamics when they can play really quiet and really loud and move from one to another and play everything in between as well.
Now, this happens in this song quite a few times, and then you pointed out to me, and it's almost like you don't notice it, that there's no drums in the song.
There's no drums. And it's like the chorus, when he says the man's too strong, it's like someone punching you in the face.
Yeah.
And then it goes quiet again. And it's such a cool song. And you have a synth guitar played by a guy called Jack Sonny, who joined the band for the tour, played a few gigs with them. And Knopfler always used the second guitar player to play the rhythm guitar live. And for this album, I think Knopfler recorded pretty much all the guitars, and this guy joined the band for this song, and after that he played with them. Interesting story about him: he was a pro musician, but he was working at a music shop, a guitar shop, and Knopfler used to go there, talk to him, in the late 70s. And one day he called him and said, "Do you know what? I need a guitar player. Would you join us?" Can you imagine? You work in a guitar shop, and one of the most famous bands in the world said, "Yeah, we want you as a guitar player."
Wow.
The guy you can see him in the videos. He did all the videos, even for the songs he didn't record. He's in all the videos for this album.
And
he looks so excited.
Your life changing in one day. Anyway, that was a lovely one because, like we said, the power and the journey just by dynamics and vocals is so obvious. It's really good.
It's all about the songwriting more than the production, more than anything else.
Yeah,
Beautiful song.
So we come to the penultimate track of the album, which is called One World. The interesting thing for me as a bass player, and you can hear it straight off, is that there is slap bass, which it was very common for the time. You had disco and funk were taking shape in the late 70s, but it kind of it hit its stride in the 80s, and even non-disco and non-funk acts, what Motown and soul turned out to, what Motown and soul transformed into in the 80s. There was often quite a bit of slap bass going around, and like I said, also funk, disco, that was all it wasn't uncommon to hear some slap bass. So
and no one does it anymore.
It's completely outdated.
If you play a slap today, someone's going to sack you.
Another reference track is Paul Simon, Graceland. There's a slap bass solo in the middle of the song, whenever I hear any slap bass, my mind always goes to Graceland. So find the middle of that.
And just mentioning that, they had a guest musician again for that one, Stone 11 on the bass.
Yes, yeah.
Who
That's really good,
with loads of famous bands.
It was really interesting. I found this one to be the most like Money for Nothing out of the rest of the album. Although it was short, and I know Money for Nothing's long, but it was pop rock.
It's even more 80s, more electronic. The vocals are full of effects and sounds like,
Well, you did, when you were listening to it,
singing.
you said there's that middle section where,
it's quite
I know it's a keyboard, but on the keyboard they've got a harpsichord sound, and a harpsichord, we mentioned this in one of the episodes last year, a harpsichord is a piano where the string is plucked instead of tapped, and J.S. Bach used it in all of his compositions in the 1600s. And you've got that sound coming in, and it was very progressive, wasn't it? And you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, there's a bit of a prog rock element for bars,
which is another style and genre we've heard in this album.
Yeah. There's so much
country,
in it.
pop, rock,
well,
blues,
just mentioning
jazz.
We talk about your latest trick. The drums sound like bossa nova. So you got bossa nova, you got jazz, you got pop, funk, rock,
blues, and now prog.
It's all in there. Yeah.
Do you have anything more to say about One World?
No. Let's move on to the last song, which for me sums up the album somehow. And it's like a combination of everything that happens. As you said, It's not a concept album, but it takes you into a journey from the first to the last song. And when you get to the last song, I think the traditional Dire Straits fans, they would feel a lot more comfortable listening to that song. That's a much more typical Dire Straits song. And the guitar tells the story more than anything else. And it's a beautiful guitar intro, guitar solo. It's very emotional. If you check any of the live versions, it feels like almost if Mark Knopfler is about to cry every time he sings it.
I've written in my notes emotional. It's lovely.
It's
very
so beautiful.
Heartfelt song. It actually reminds me, do you know Albatross by Fleetwood Mac? I know Albatross doesn't have any lyrics, does it? But
I know the vibe.
The very chilled vibe, the guitar taking it really sweetly and gently. Lovely track. Again, I can pinpoint it as being an 80s track, but doesn't take anything away from it. It's a lovely track.
He wrote that song when the Falklands War was going on. But I believe it's about wars in general. Yeah. So it's about the feeling of soldiers in the battlefield thinking, this is pointless. What the hell are we doing here? Yeah. I just want to go back to my farm, back to my home, or whatever. And it feels like, it's like we're all brothers. Why are we fighting? Yeah, so the whole thing. And he mentions the fact that soldiers from both sides have the same ideology. So why are they fighting at all? And it's a beautiful song thinking about that. Makes you think about how pointless it is to make wars. Yeah. And beautiful, fantastic, great way to end an album.
Yeah, it is. No, it's really nice. So that brings us to the end of the album, and funnily enough, to the end of the show. I want to just tell you what I think of the album, then I'm going to ask you a question. Yeah. So just to sum it up, and all of these albums we've done before, I have known or listened to before. This is the first one where I only heard it for the first time last night and was able to properly dissect it and listen to it myself. I think it's a really nice, accessible album. I think there is something for everybody. There are different genres incorporated, as we've just mentioned. Yeah. There's different styles. The fact that there's different musicians on each track sometimes. Yeah. Again, it just opens up another avenue. You may not like the drumming of this guy. Well, not the drumming, because it was one. I know what you mean about Omar. Yeah. He's on all of the album except the intro. But for example, the bass playing. You might not like the bass playing on all the songs except One World. So it's just they opens it to everyone. Exactly. Why not? So that's my thoughts on the album. I thought it was really good. Very 80s. I think some of the sounds you could say are outdated now and probably don't hold up, but it wouldn't stop me from listening to it again. I really enjoyed it. And I think, so the question I want to ask you is, what for you did Brothers in Arms do for rock and roll, and what impact has it had on rock music and music in general?
Wow. Hard to define. I think one of the most important things was the quality of the songs matters more than anything else. At that time, mid-80s, every single celebrity on the music industry would be good-looking, young, and appealing to young audiences. And they were just like a bunch of guys playing guitars, Not saying you're not good-looking, Mark Knopfler, just saying that. It's like... it was all about the music. It was all about how good the songwriting is. And it was about that freedom of writing whatever you want to write. And just maybe...
different genres.
Different genres.
The conversation, different styles. If he wanted a different musician on a track, he would get it. Yeah. That's a really valid point.
Also, a band that has reached a level of success that most bands don't have. You get to that point and you've made so much money, you've toured the world, you've got 4 very successful studio albums, and it was pretty much the end of their career.
Yeah. And to release an album
and they came up with an album that's like so good. Yeah. So I believe what it made for rock and roll was to connect a band that was on the road for a while to new fans, to a different audience.
Did they get new fans after this?
Probably. I'm pretty sure they did, because it's like most people know this album and more than the entire career.
Yeah, right.
And most people, and obviously it's the best-selling album, and it's one of the best-selling albums in the history of music and rock and roll.
I think I read it's the 9th best-selling album in the UK ever.
Okay, so there you go. If you want to connect it, if I want to say just one thing to actually sum it up is, Brothers in Arms made rock and roll accessible and commercial, and he connected to the MTV era in a perfect way.
I just want to add to that. At a time where rock and roll wasn't thriving in the mid-80s.
Not at all.
Yeah,
so even when you listen to this album, and it's a bit cheesy sometimes, a bit too 80s, but it was way more rock and roll than most things at that time.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Perfect. Well, that brings us nicely to the end of the episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. The whole album's going to be in the playlist, as well as everything that we've compared it to and stuff we've put in. Once again, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Felipe's finishing off his last bit of Guinness. Perfect. The episode lasted a Guinness full. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Again, our first show of 2022. Really excited to see what this year has in store for us, and we hope that you'll come on this journey with us. Please find us on our socials, on Instagram and Twitter. We are at longliverocknrollpod, and on Facebook and YouTube, you search the Long Live Rock and Roll Podcast. Now, starting from January 1st, which was 2 days ago, we've set up a companion account called Today in Rock and Roll. And what we're going to be doing is, for 1 year, we're going to be posting all the key events, moments, and occasions of rock and roll in this account with nice photos that we've made and the research we've done. And we're going to post something every day. So every day you're going to learn what happened on this day in rock and roll however many years ago. So give that a follow if you're interested in the events and the facts and everything. Apple subscribers, Apple podcast users, it would really help us with the algorithms and the visibility if you could give us a review on the Apple Podcasts app. Any review would do us so much favours in showing us up more on the app. But again, once again, thank you for joining us, and we've had a great time. And any last thing to say, Felipe?
Well, I just want to thank everyone who's been with us for the last year, and I'm really looking forward to what we can achieve in this year, 2022. Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we've made it. So thanks a lot for being with us, and keep on rocking everyone.
And as usual, long live rock and roll.